Day converted man here. By now, you've surely seen the Aaron Raw versus Emmanuel video that I have on my channel, as it got a lot of comments. And then maybe you've also seen my interview with Emmanuel. But this video isn't directly about those videos, it's about the comments that I received on the Aaron Raw versus Emmanuel video, wherein the complexity of language made a interesting splash. People were disagreeing / confused with Aaron Raw's position. Now, I can't speak for the man, but I can speak to the broad position that one might take. True, false versus a metaphor, and more. So, Ra said lie, which means intentionality is behind it. So people were saying that's not the dichotomy. The dichotomy would be true and not true, or true or false, not true and lie, because a lie is a lie is not true, but it's not false. It could be a white lie, which would still be false. So yeah, no, lie is still not true, so it's still false. You just happen to know that it's not true, on top of it being not true. So it's still a dichotomy. But people were kind of confused. Some people didn't want this to be the true dichotomy. How dare you reduce everything to such a simple black and white? Life is not so simple, I agree. It's very complex. There's shades of gray. But if you're trying to examine reality and get to the best, most true version of reality that we can perceive, then either the thing's going to be true or it's not going to be true. Or another way to put it is it might be objective versus subjective. If it's objective, then it's the thing that it is, and that's what it is. And if it's subjective, then, well, anything and everything goes, at least to some extent. Number of comments here to look at. I'm going to focus on a couple, and also a minor promo for ChatGPT. It's ChatGPT Rights channel, which is a little experiment that we have going on that you might want to check out, maybe. Anyway, okay, so let me get myself smaller here. That was not the button. There we go. Okay. So one example of an interesting take on this whole thing was Kay's comment. So we'll read that as it disappears off into the screen. Okay, here we go. All right. Let's make it a little bit. Jeez. Making it bigger. Always messing the things up. Only professional editing in these videos. Here we go. Metaphors are extremely important in exploring consciousness and theories of mind. Try Lykoff's and Johnson's Metaphors We Live By and look into cognitive linguistics. Why would I want to try? What do you mean try? Like, are you talking about a book? How do you try a book? You mean read that book? Anyways, I am not a Christian, okay? I certainly do not think that the Bible is literal. At best, it has some genealogies and slanted history, but it's mostly myths and fables. By the way, the genealogies, at least one of them has to be false, because there's two different genealogies given for a single thing. And if many of the peoples in the genealogies are not really real people, then they're false. And although you could have some wiggle room with the ages not really being what they're listed as, if you take the ages being literal, then people can't be 900 or 777 or any of the other insane ages that these people have, so then they can't be real either. So all of the genealogies would also be fake, false, not true. Slanted history would also not be true. I'm a big fan of Aaron's educational content, but in this clip, he comes off as a total smug ass. Well, that's subjective. Okay. And that's just not the kind of person I want to be or that I want to endorse. Okay, well, then attempt to give an argumentation of why they should change or whatever, but okay. He is not exhibiting the black. Is he not exhibiting the black and white thinking he mocks believers for showing? I don't think he mocks black and white thinking per se. Again, it's hard to speak. I don't want to speak for the man, but I do think that he mocks believers for believing in something that is not true. The story is obviously metaphorical, obvious to you, perhaps, in referring to the Jacob wrestling with God story. What makes it obviously metaphor? How do you identify a metaphor? That's an unanswered question that Emmanuel hasn't provided an answer for, and I don't know that anyone has provided an answer for regarding how you explore what's metaphor, what's not, at least in the Bible. How do you decide what's metaphor or not? And then that system would be something that ideally every Christian could apply, and then they'd all know what the metaphors are and what the metaphors are not. But of course, they're not going to agree upon any system, no matter what system you devise, because they want certain things to be metaphors and other things to not be metaphors. So you might indeed view it as metaphorical, but that doesn't matter. Anyways, complex beyond simply true or lie. So it's complex beyond the simplicity of true or lie. No, it's not. Because either it's true or it's not true. That's it. There's no middle ground here because we're trying to arrive at what reality is, at least the best we can. So either it's true or it's not true. That's it. If it's half true, if it's 90% true, then that's not good enough, and we're going to discard it, or at least discard the bits that are not true. We're only interested in the truth. So if it contains if it contains any untruth, we might indeed discard it in full, and that might not be fair, but that's what we are doing because we're trying to get to the actual truth of the matter. So a metaphor in this case is going to be viewed as false, no matter what that metaphor is, because it's not the actual thing itself. The whole point of a metaphor is to make the complex thing simple. You can't pull out a single verse. You need a ton more context. Well, that's interesting. Christians do it all the time, so I think you can pull out a single verse. And this isn't a single verse, it's a number of verses for the story. Now, the context around it, okay, that hear this word a lot. We see this a lot. Okay, how does that inform you of whether or not the story is a metaphor? How does the context clues clue you into it being a metaphor? Because a straight reading of it, how do you get to metaphor from a straight reading of it? Nowhere does it say, by the way, hey, this is going to be a metaphor, or like you know they're dreaming or something. I mean, it only now when Jesus is giving parables, they're called parables. That's a story, so you know that these are metaphorical. There's an actual thing that's being done to tell you, hey, this is a metaphor. But here, that doesn't happen because it's literature, poetry, not science. Poetry can be analyzed using scientific methodology. So you don't have to separate the categories. There's nothing wrong with studying poetry, right? And if you study something, then you might want a system to be able to study it by, like science. You need to be able to see, interpret, and deconstruct metaphors. Right. And if you do that, then what will be the result of that? Well, here's the problem with metaphor is that different people are going to come to different conclusions because it's subjective, not objective, unless you're using a system that can get you to a certain result every time. And then if everyone uses that given system on any given metaphor, they should get the result as the person next to them. And do we see that? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Depends on the metaphor being employed. But in this case, with this particular text, I don't think that we would have the same results every time. So it's going to be subjective, and therefore it's not true. Just as much as you need to understand, demonstrate the principles of the scientific method. And they have been demonstrably demonstrated, so I think that's been done. Anyway, so I tried to explain that it is a true dichotomy and that what the half-truth fallacy is, and I tried to give an example of metaphor using a poem called The Tiger by William Blake. Is the word tiger, since it's not spelled as the real word, maybe you could view that poem as that word is its own separate thing. It's not meant to be a tiger. It's not meant to be anything, maybe. Who knows? It's meant to be this or that, and it's all subjective, right? So it's a metaphor, so it's false using that guideline of, you want to get to what is true. And since it's going to be subjective, then there isn't a truth value to that other than to your, this is how I view it. Okay, fair enough, but it's not how we all view it. And he didn't like that. He doesn't want to be involved in the mechanistic binary thinking. It renders the world too simple and stark. Humans deserve color, complexity, nuance, rarity. And then my interpretation of Blake is very telling, sadly. I won't be gauging your work. Or errands. Have a nice day. Thank you for your light. Yeah, I don't know. You're not a Christian, but you're something. I don't know what you believe in, but it's weird. Okay. And then there was other people, again, kind of going over the, well, there's a difference between true, false, and metaphor. Metaphors exist. And so if metaphors exist, then it's not really, true or false. It's just, that it's something else. Let's see if I can find that particular passage here. Okay, here we go. All right. So this guy is saying, I would normally agree, but this is a case where R is wrong. Metaphors exist. True lies is a false dichotomy. No, it's not a false dichotomy because either it's true or false. Now, again, the lie, well, we know when a lie indicates that there's an intentionality of producing a falsehood, which is still, it's close enough to being false that, I mean, a lie is something that's said that's not true. So not true / true is indeed a true dichotomy, meaning true / lie is also a true dichotomy. And it's interesting that they don't think that part of the Torah was intended to be a metaphor. So see, they disagree with that previous person who said it was obviously a metaphor. Interesting how different people come to different conclusions about this particular passage. Is it meant to be taken as real or metaphor? If it's metaphor, that's not real. That's how it's meant to be taken. It's not true. You can extrapolate from it. You can come up with different ideas about what it's supposed to mean, but it's subjective. It's not objective. It's not true in that sense. So who cares then? And we're trying to get to that. Either it's true or it's not true. That's a true dichotomy, whether you like it or not. I said it's a true dichotomy. He said, why are you acting like lie and not true are synonyms? I'm a native English speaker and I know they're not. Anyways, I'm an atheist, so obviously I think it's not true, but false dichotomies and true or lie are just dot dot dot. It is not a false dichotomy. Lie and not true are synonyms. Yeah, if it's a lie, then it's not true. What else is it? If it's a lie, it's not. What else do you think a lie is? To be a lie, being not true is neither necessary nor sufficient. It requires generally one of two things. Okay, this should be interesting. The statement must be intended to deceive. In other words, it's a lie. He lied and said that he was a murderer, but unbeknownst to him, she really was the murderer. Uh, what? He lied and said she was the murderer. Okay, so he lied about her being the murderer. He thinks she's not the murderer, but in actuality, she is the murderer. Okay, so he's saying something that's not true from his perspective, but it turns out to be true in reality. I see. Okay, so it's not true because he said a thing that wasn't true, but actually it is true because in reality, I see. Okay, so under that version of lie, then yes, there's some nuance there, and this is a problem with natural language, that a word can mean something to somebody and something to somebody else, but lie here is, an intent to deceive. Okay, sure. Or that the statement in fact deceives. Well, but it also could be a falsehood, something that you know is not true. That's another possibility of what a lie is. So, depending on how we're viewing the word lie, if I'm viewing lie as being untrue, then it's a true dichotomy. But I can agree here that 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 it's ambiguous. The word lie is being ambiguous here and maybe introducing some problems that not true has versus lie. But in the context, I think that given the context of the conversation and everything going on, I think that we can understand that lie is a substitute for not true. So I'm being a little bit hard on this guy, but I'm being hard on everyone, including myself, hopefully. Um, so here's the statement, in fact, deceives. Statistics on black crime rates sometimes lie and give the impression black people are more inherently prone to commit crimes. I'm not sure that's a good example of a lie because statistics aren't lying. You're interpreting the statistics to mean something. And that's the part that wouldn't be true, is how your interpretation of it. So, anyways, my opinion is most of the Bible is probably lies. That's nothing to do with the fact that true lie is false dichotomy. If not, definitely to most, not all native speakers. But again, it's not a false dichotomy because you can view it as a true dichotomy, as I'm doing, and as I continue to defend in this video and in my writings. I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. I think it can be a true dichotomy. It can also be that you're using a different version of lie, and then you could say, well, there's an excluded middle there. Okay, fair enough. But again, we can understand that it can be viewed as a true dichotomy. So it was, and then another person, So I think that we did get caught up on true and lie, and the word lie being more ambiguous than not true or false. Um, it is by definition the not true one, right? Yeah, Nice just said, look, true false is the same as true / not true. Jeez. But also you're wrong, yeah, it would be a false dichotomy if the book it came from and its defenders didn't claim it to be 100% true and real. Right. That's the issue at hand, is in this context, talking about this verse, talking about this thing of the Bible, and asking the question, is it true or a lie? In other words, did the people write it intending to deceive. Maybe they did. We don't know their intentionality, or they wrote it intending to be. Uh, it is in fact deceiving because the statement is a metaphor. So because you can interpret metaphor in multiple ways, then you can be deceived by your interpretation of it. So it would still be false. It would be a lie. And there you go. So when he says it's true or it's a lie, it's still correct, even using this guy's own version of what lie means. Okay, so lots of comments, and some people thought, and I get it, because freaking natural language is a thing, and lie versus not true, or lie versus false. There's some ambiguity with the word lie, and but metaphor. What about metaphor? Well, if we're going with it's either true or false, then metaphor would wind up in the false category every time. The reason is because the whole point of the metaphor is to make something complicated into something simple, right? So you're changing the actual reality of the thing in order to explain it in a simple way. And there you go. Now, the further problem of metaphor is the ambiguity of it, is the language of it, is the fact that whatever you pull from it is going to be subjective. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't come up with a way to make it objective, but you would need some sort of system to do so. Some people just don't want to be in that. They're like, no, there's more flavor and variety beyond true or not true in the world. But ultimately, nah, I mean, kind of no. I mean, either it's actually really real for real, or it's not really real for real. Like, and you go, well, what's the percentage? Is it 99% real? Can we ever get to the 100% true? And we can never get there, and all this sort of things. Like, well, look, we can get pretty darn close, and whatever that pretty darn close is, it's like that's the closest we can get, maybe, and that's gonna be the thing that we call true. And it's like, well, but it's not truly true because blah blah blah. It's like you can't solve the problem of induction. Well, we could be wrong, our senses could be wrong. Yeah, and those are all good reasons to be a skeptic in the end. But is this verse meant to be taken this way, or is it meant to be taken as something else? So is it literal? Is it really going on? Is God really touching Jacob and making his hip be dislocated? No, it's meant to be a metaphor. Okay, so it's not literal. So it's lying. It's not telling us the truth. It's telling us a story that we're meant to interpret. Now, it doesn't tell us how we're meant to interpret it. So then that makes it subjective and open to various views. And the fact that different people can't decide whether it's objective whether it's a metaphor or not a metaphor shows that even non-Christians, we don't know. It's like, it's obviously a metaphor. I don't think it's meant to be taken as a metaphor. Well, who knows how it's meant to be taken? That's part of the problem, is we don't have a system to decide what the bleep in the Bible is meant to be a metaphor and what isn't. Now, we're outsiders. Well, I was speaking for myself, of course, but I'm an outsider. I'm not the person presenting the Bible. So I shouldn't be the one to come up with that system. I could come up with the system, but I shouldn't be the one that does that. That should be the role of the person that's presenting the Bible. Give me the system that you think will allow everyone to determine what is a metaphor and what isn't a metaphor. Now, you won't get anyone to agree with you to use that system, probably. But at least then we can read the Bible together and go, okay, well, this is the metaphor part. Yeah, okay, all right, great. We can skip that because we don't care, because I'm just looking for what's true. That's all I care about. And if that's all I care about, then if it's a lie or a deception or a metaphor, well, then it's not true, it's false, and I don't care. Moving on. Now, as I said, the nuance. Of course, there's nuance. There's nuance in many, many things. Language is complicated, things are complicated, but we can boil it down to true or false. We can. It just takes a lot of effort to do so. Or at least I think we can. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, check out ChatGPT. I did it again. ChatGPT writes and see if you like that. It's a robot telling us how to make videos. Basically, it's AI. The scripts are AI. The voice is not AI. Everything else is AI generated or AI something to do with AI, and so that's a thing. See ya next time, or well, I'll read you next time, or well, it's a metaphor, so I guess it's not true next time. Wait, what?